Welcome to the Sleepy Island channel. Tonight, we're embarking on a gentle journey to one of America's most enchanting island chains, the Florida Keys. Over the next 2 hours, I'll share 100 fascinating facts about this tropical paradise, woven together in a soothing story designed to help you drift into peaceful, restful sleep. So go ahead and get comfortable. Adjust your pillows, settle into your blankets, and let your body sink deeply into your bed. There's nowhere you need to be, nothing you need to do. Just breathe, relax, and let my voice carry you away to the warm, sun-kissed shores of the Florida Keys. Let's begin. Imagine standing at the very edge of mainland Florida, where the peninsula dissolves into a string of pearls scattered across turquoise waters. The Florida Keys stretch before you like a gentle necklace draped across the sea, extending 120 miles from the southern tip of the Florida mainland all the way to Key West, a chain of islands that seems to float between the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico, suspended in a world that exists somewhere between land and sea. As you gaze out at this archipelago, the late afternoon sun casts golden light across the water, and you notice something remarkable about the way these islands came to be. Unlike the sandy barrier islands you might find along Florida's Atlantic coast, the Florida Keys are primarily composed of ancient coral reefs and limestone that formed over millions of years. The islands beneath your feet are the weathered remains of coral colonies that once thrived in a shallow, ancient sea, now lifted above the waves and transformed into this chain of paradise. The warm breeze carries the scent of salt and tropical flowers as you contemplate the name itself, the Keys. It's a word that sounds almost musical, gentle on the tongue, and the name Keys comes from the Spanish word cayos, meaning small islands. Spanish explorers who first charted these waters in the 1500s looked out at these scattered jewels of land and gave them a name that would echo through centuries, a name that speaks to their intimate, precious nature. As evening begins to settle, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose, you realize just how many of these islands dot the seascape around you. There are approximately 1,700 islands in the Florida Keys, though most are too small to support human habitation. Tiny mangrove outcroppings, limestone fragments, sandbars that appear and disappear with the tides. Only about 30 of these islands are inhabited, each one a small world unto itself, connected by bridges and the shared rhythm of island life. The sky deepens now, shifting from gold to violet, and you find yourself thinking about the remarkable highway that ties this necklace of islands together. The Overseas Highway, also known as US Route 1, connects the Florida Keys to mainland Florida through 42 bridges, creating what must be one of the most scenic drives in all of America. This engineering marvel seems to float above the water, carrying travelers from key to key, suspension bridge to causeway, each span offering views of endless ocean on both sides. As darkness begins to gather and the first stars appear in the deepening blue above, you consider the unique position of these islands in the American landscape. The Florida Keys are the only place in the continental United States where you can find a tropical climate, not subtropical like Miami or Tampa, but truly tropical, with warm temperatures year-round and ecosystems more akin to the Caribbean than to any other part of the mainland. Here, palm trees sway not as decorative imports but as native inhabitants, perfectly suited to their environment. The moon rises now, full and luminous, casting a silver pathway across the gentle waves. And you recall an important designation that protects the waters surrounding you. The Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary encompasses 2,900 square nautical miles of coastal waters, protecting one of the most diverse marine ecosystems in North America. This vast underwater preserve safeguards coral reefs, seagrass beds, mangrove islands, and countless species of fish and marine life, ensuring that future generations will inherit these waters as vibrant and alive as they are tonight. As you stand there in the moonlight, feeling the warm night breeze and listening to the soft rhythm of waves against the shore, one final detail settles into your awareness about this chain of islands. Key West, the southernmost point of the Keys, sits just 90 miles north of Cuba, closer to Havana than to Miami. This proximity to the Caribbean has infused the Keys with a distinct cultural flavor, a blend of American, Caribbean, and Latin influences that makes these islands feel like a place apart, a tropical dream at the edge of the nation. The night deepens around you, stars multiplying across the velvet sky, and the gentle sound of the tide lulls you into even deeper relaxation. Your breathing slows, deepens, and you feel yourself drifting like a boat on calm waters, peaceful and completely at ease. The night air wraps around you like a soft blanket as you continue your peaceful journey through the Keys. The moon hangs high above, illuminating the water with that ethereal glow that seems to exist only in places where the ocean meets the sky without interruption. You find yourself walking now, barefoot along a quiet beach, the sand still warm from the day's sunshine, each grain smooth beneath your feet. As you wander along this tranquil shore, you think about the very foundation of the ground beneath you, and you learn something fascinating. The highest natural point in the Florida Keys is only 18 feet above sea level, found on Windley Key in the Upper Keys. These islands hug the waterline, intimate with the sea, never reaching for height but instead spreading themselves gently across the surface of the ocean like lily pads on a pond. This low-lying nature gives the Keys their distinctive character. Everywhere you look, water and land exist in constant conversation. The gentle sound of the waves creates a rhythm that matches your slowing heartbeat, and you notice something moving in the shallows near the shore. The Florida Keys are home to the only living coral reef in the continental United States, a vibrant underwater garden that parallels the island chain. This reef system stretches along the Keys, a few miles offshore, creating an underwater rainbow of colors and life. Brain coral, elkhorn coral, staghorn coral. They form cities beneath the waves where tropical fish dart and dance, where sea turtles glide like ancient mariners, where an entire ecosystem pulses with life just below the surface. You settle down on the sand now, lying back to gaze up at the stars, and your mind drifts to the fascinating history of how people have traveled between these islands over the years. Henry Flagler's Overseas Railroad, completed in 1912, was called the eighth wonder of the world, connecting the mainland to Key West through an ambitious series of bridges and railroad tracks built across open ocean. For 23 years, passengers could ride a train all the way to Key West, watching the ocean pass on both sides, feeling as though they were traveling across the surface of the sea itself. Though a hurricane destroyed much of the railroad in 1935, its legacy lives on. Many of the bridges of today's overseas highway rest upon the foundations Flagler's engineers laid more than a century ago. The stars above seem to pulse gently, and a warm drowsiness begins to settle over you like morning mist. You think about the unique wildlife that calls these islands home, and one particular creature captures your imagination. The key deer, found only in the lower Keys, is the smallest subspecies of white-tailed deer in North America, standing only about 2 to 3 feet tall at the shoulder. These diminutive deer, no bigger than large dogs, evolved in isolation on these islands, adapting to the limited resources and small land masses available to them. They wander through the neighborhoods of Big Pine Key and No Name Key, gentle spirits perfectly suited to their miniature island world. Your eyelids grow heavier now, and you allow them to close for long moments, the sound of the ocean becoming a lullaby. When you open them again, you notice the water glowing faintly in the darkness, and you remember something magical about these waters. The Keys are one of the few places in the United States where you can witness bioluminescence, particularly in the summer months when countless microscopic organisms called dinoflagellates light up the water with their chemical glow. When the conditions are just right, every movement in the water creates cascades of blue-green light, as if the ocean itself has swallowed the stars and now glimmers from within. The moon continues its slow arc across the sky, and you feel yourself sinking deeper into the sand, your body completely relaxed, tension melting away like sugar dissolving in warm tea. A thought drifts through your peaceful mind about the cultural tapestry of these islands. Key West became known as the Conch Republic in 1982 when residents symbolically seceded from the United States in protest of a Border Patrol roadblock that was causing traffic delays for tourists entering the Keys. Though the secession was tongue-in-cheek, the name stuck, and to this day, residents of the Keys proudly call themselves Conchs, a term originally used for Bahamian settlers who came to the islands in the 1800s. The spirit of independence and playful rebellion still defines the Keys' character. The night deepens further, and time seems to stretch and slow, becoming as fluid as the water lapping gently at the shore. You notice how the vegetation around you differs from anywhere else you've been, and you learn that the Keys are home to over 20 endangered or threatened species, including the diminutive key deer, the tiny lower Keys marsh rabbit, the silver rice rat, and various species of sea turtles. These islands serve as crucial habitat for creatures found nowhere else on Earth, small refuges of biodiversity where evolution has taken unique paths, creating plants and animals specially adapted to life on these limestone jewels. As you lie there under the stars, completely at peace, you think about the water that surrounds you on all sides, and one more detail settles into your consciousness like a feather landing on still water. The Florida Keys sit at the meeting point of the Atlantic Ocean and the Gulf of Mexico, with the Atlantic's deeper blue waters on one side and the Gulf's greener, shallower waters on the other. The night embraces you completely now, and you've lost track of time in the most wonderful way. Hours could have passed, or mere moments. It no longer matters. You find yourself drifting along a quiet path beneath a canopy of swaying palms, the moonlight filtering through the fronds in patterns of silver and shadow that dance across your face. Each step feels effortless, dreamlike, as if you're floating just above the ground. As you meander along this peaceful route, you become aware of the air itself, thick and warm and fragrant. There's something distinctly different about the atmosphere here, and you discover why. The Florida Keys have an average annual temperature of 77.8 degrees Fahrenheit, with winters rarely dipping below 65 degrees and summers rarely exceeding 90. This extraordinary consistency creates an eternal spring, a place where the weather seems locked in that perfect temperature where you need neither coat nor fan, where the air feels like a gentle embrace against your skin, day after day, month after month, year after year. The path leads you toward the water's edge once more, and in the moonlight, you can see the distinctive shape of the shoreline. Unlike the sweeping sandy beaches of Florida's Atlantic coast, these shores have a different character entirely. The beaches of the Florida Keys are not made of traditional sand but rather of crushed coral, shells, and limestone, giving them a unique texture and color, sometimes white, sometimes golden, sometimes with hints of pink from pulverized coral. When you run this sand through your fingers, you're touching the ancient remains of sea creatures, the broken fragments of reefs, the powdered bones of the ocean itself. You settle onto a weathered wooden dock that extends out over the calm water, your legs dangling above the gentle swells, and you gaze down into the crystalline depths below. The water is so clear that even in the moonlight, you can see the bottom, and you remember something remarkable. The waters surrounding the Keys are home to more than 6,000 species of marine life, including over 500 species of fish alone. Beneath this tranquil surface exists a metropolis of life, parrotfish sleeping in mucus cocoons, octopi squeezing through impossibly small spaces, Murray eels peering from rocky crevices, nurse sharks gliding silently across the sandy bottom. The diversity of life in these waters rivals that of any tropical ocean on Earth. A gentle breeze whispers across the water, and you lie back on the warm planks of the dock, feeling them solid and sun-worn beneath your shoulders. Your eyelids grow heavy, but your mind continues its peaceful wandering through the history of these islands. You think about the people who first discovered this paradise, and you learn that the original inhabitants of the Florida Keys were the Calusa and Tequesta Native American tribes, who thrived in these islands for thousands of years before European contact. They built their homes on shell mounds, navigated the shallow waters in dugout canoes, harvested fish and shellfish from the abundant seas, and understood the rhythms of this place in ways that have been largely lost to time. The very shell mounds they built still exist on some islands, rising above the landscape like ancient monuments. The moon has moved across the sky now, and a profound drowsiness settles over you like morning fog rolling in from the sea. You think about the famous highway you traveled to reach these islands, and another detail emerges from your peaceful thoughts. The 7-mile bridge, one of the longest bridges in the world when it was built, is actually 6.765 miles long and connects Knights Key in the Middle Keys to Little Duck Key in the Lower Keys. Driving across this bridge feels like flying low over the ocean, with water stretching endlessly on both sides, the horizon blurring the line between sea and sky. The old 7-mile bridge, which runs parallel to the newer one, has been featured in countless films and photographs, its weathered concrete spans slowly being reclaimed by the sea. Your breathing has become so slow and deep now, each breath a journey in itself, and you feel your consciousness beginning to blur at the edges, thoughts becoming softer and less distinct. Through this peaceful haze, you consider the economic heartbeat of the Keys, what sustains these islands beyond their natural beauty. Tourism has been the primary industry of the Florida Keys since the 1920s, when the overseas railroad first made the islands easily accessible. Before that, the Keys survived on fishing, sponge harvesting, salvaging shipwrecks, and cigar making. But once visitors discovered this tropical paradise at the edge of America, tourism bloomed like coral in warm waters, and the islands transformed into a destination where people come to shed the weight of the world, to slow down, to remember what it feels like to simply breathe and be. The stars above seem to pulse in time with your heartbeat, and you notice how they seem brighter here than anywhere else you've been. There's a reason for this clarity, this brilliance. The Florida Keys have minimal light pollution compared to mainland Florida, especially in the middle and lower Keys, where vast stretches of ocean and sparse development allow the night sky to reveal itself in all its glory. On the darkest nights, away from the glow of Key West and Marathon, you can see the Milky Way stretching across the heavens like a river of light, can watch satellites drifting silently overhead, can spot meteors streaking through the atmosphere. The universe feels closer here, more intimate, as if the thin line between Earth and sky allows the cosmos to lean in and whisper its secrets. You've surrendered completely to relaxation now. Your body melted into the dock beneath you, every muscle loose and heavy. One more thought drifts through your mind like a boat on calm waters, gentle and unhurried. The Florida Keys National Wildlife Refuges encompass over 400,000 acres across multiple islands and waters, protecting critical habitat for migratory birds, sea turtles, and countless other species. These refuges include the Great White Heron National Wildlife Refuge, the Key West National Wildlife Refuge, and the National Key Deer Refuge, among others. They serve as sanctuaries within sanctuaries, places where nature can exist undisturbed, where birds can rest during their long migrations, where endangered species can find safe harbor in an increasingly crowded world. The night wraps around you like the softest blanket you've ever known, and the sound of water lapping against the dock posts becomes a rhythm that matches the beating of your heart, steady, slow, peaceful. You feel yourself drifting now, really drifting, floating between waking and dreaming, held safely by the night and the islands and the endless, patient sea. Time has lost all meaning now, dissolving like salt in the warm ocean water. You find yourself walking again, though you can't quite remember standing up from the dock. Perhaps you're dreaming, or perhaps this is simply what happens when you surrender completely to the rhythm of island life. Your feet carry you along a narrow trail through dense, twisted vegetation that seems to grow directly from the water itself. These trees are unlike any you've encountered before, their roots arching above the waterline like the flying buttresses of ancient cathedrals. The Florida Keys are surrounded by extensive mangrove forests, which serve as nurseries for countless marine species including juvenile fish, shrimp, lobster, and crabs. These remarkable trees, red mangroves, black mangroves, and white mangroves, have adapted to thrive in saltwater, filtering the salt through their roots and leaves, creating a unique ecosystem that exists in the space between land and sea. Their tangled root systems protect the shoreline from erosion, filter pollutants from the water, and provide shelter for an incredible abundance of life. As you brush past their branches, you can almost feel the energy of all the creatures that depend on these twisted, resilient trees. The path opens up, and you find yourself in a small town, quiet and still in the deep hours of night. Street lamps cast pools of golden light, and you notice something peculiar moving through the shadows. Key West is famously home to hundreds of wild chickens and roosters that roam freely through the streets, descendants of birds brought to the island centuries ago for cockfighting and as farm animals. These colorful, bold birds have become unofficial mascots of the island, strutting across roads, perching on fences, and crowing at all hours with complete disregard for human schedules. Protected by local ordinances, they're as much a part of Key West as the sunset itself. Quirky, loud, utterly uncontrollable, and somehow perfectly suited to the island's laid-back, anything-goes atmosphere. You continue walking through this drowsy town, and the soft sound of your footsteps echoes in the empty streets. Your mind drifts to thoughts of the famous residents who once called this place home, and one name rises to the surface like a bubble in still water. Ernest Hemingway lived and wrote in Key West from 1931 to 1939, creating some of his most celebrated works in a Spanish colonial house that still stands today. The home is now a museum, and it's inhabited by approximately 40 to 50 cats, many of them polydactyls, six-toed cats, descended from Hemingway's original pet, Snow White. These cats roam the lush gardens freely, lounging in the shade of tropical plants, napping on Hemingway's writing desk, living a life of literary luxury. There's something magical about the idea of these six-toed cats carrying forward a genetic legacy while surrounded by the legacy of words their famous benefactor left behind. The sky is beginning to show the faintest hint of change, that deep black softening almost imperceptibly toward the darkest blue. Your eyelids are so heavy now, but you continue your peaceful wandering, drawn towards something ahead. Key West holds the distinction of being the southernmost city in the continental United States, and there's a famous marker, a large concrete buoy painted in red, yellow, and black, that marks this geographic milestone. Standing at this point, you're closer to Havana, Cuba, than you are to Miami, Florida. There's something significant about being at the edge, the end, the southernmost point, as if you've traveled to the very rim of the familiar and found yourself looking out towards something exotic and mysterious. You sink down onto a bench overlooking the water, your body melting into the weathered wood, and you think about the waters that surround you. These seas have witnessed so much history, held so many secrets beneath their waves. The waters around the Florida Keys contain more than 1,000 documented shipwrecks, spanning centuries of maritime history. Spanish galleons laden with gold and silver, merchant vessels caught in hurricanes, steamships that ran aground on the reef, modern boats that miscalculated the shallow waters. These wrecks have become artificial reefs, attracting marine life and divers alike, each one a time capsule resting on the ocean floor, slowly being transformed by coral and current and time into something that belongs more to the sea than to the history books. Your breathing has become so slow and rhythmic, synchronized with the gentle lap of waves against the seawall. Through your drowsy awareness, you consider the protected treasures that lie to the west of where you sit. Dry Tortugas National Park, located 70 miles west of Key West, is almost entirely water, encompassing 7 small islands and the historic Fort Jefferson, a massive 19th century fortress built on Garden Key. Accessible only by boat or seaplane, the Dry Tortugas feel like the end of the world. Pristine waters in every shade of blue and turquoise, sea turtles nesting on beaches, coral reefs untouched by the masses, and skies filled with migrating birds. The fort itself, though never completed, stands as a monument to ambition, its brick walls rising from the sea like a castle from a dream, slowly succumbing to the salt and the wind and the patient erosion of time. The horizon is definitely lighter now, that magical hour before dawn when the world exists in shades of gray and blue, when everything feels soft and possible. You feel yourself drifting in and out, your consciousness like a tide, and through this peaceful haze, you remember something about the Keys' unique approach to time itself. The Florida Keys are known for operating on island time, a cultural phenomenon where clocks seem to move slower, where urgency dissolves in the warm air, where mañana becomes a philosophy rather than procrastination. Schedules become suggestions, watches become decorative, and the most important question of any day becomes not what time is it, but rather what does the sunset look like tonight? This approach to time isn't laziness, it's wisdom, a recognition that life moves at different speeds in different places. And in the Keys, the pace is set by the tide and the temperature and the gentle, unhurried rhythm of the sea. As the sky continues to lighten, soft pastels beginning to emerge at the eastern horizon, one more thought drifts through your peaceful mind like a feather on the breeze. John Pennekamp Coral Reef State Park, established in 1963, was the first underwater park in the United States, protecting 70 nautical square miles of coral reefs, seagrass beds, and mangrove swamps off the coast of Key Largo. Within its protected waters lies the famous Christ of the Abyss statue, a 9-foot bronze figure standing 25 feet below the surface with arms raised toward the light above. A shrine for divers, a guardian of the reef, a reminder that sacred spaces exist not only on land but beneath the waves as well. You're barely conscious now, suspended in that perfect state between sleeping and waking, where dreams and reality blur together into something softer than either. The sound of the ocean has become the sound of your own breathing, slow, deep, peaceful, and you surrender completely to the islands and the night and the promise of rest. Dawn is approaching now, that magical transformation when the world shifts from night to day, though you barely notice through your deep state of relaxation. You've found your way to a small beach, and you're lying in a hammock strung between 2 palm trees, swaying ever so gently in the morning breeze. The fabric cradles you perfectly, and you feel weightless, suspended between earth and sky, held safely in this moment of perfect peace. Through your drowsy awareness, you catch the scent of something sweet drifting on the air, and your mind wanders to thoughts of the Keys' culinary contributions. The key lime pie, Florida's official state pie, originated in the Florida Keys in the late 1800s, created by local cooks who had access to small, tart key limes and sweetened condensed milk, one of the few ingredients that didn't spoil in the days before refrigeration. The original pies had a pale yellow filling, never green, with a simple pastry crust and perhaps a meringue topping. These tiny limes, more tart and aromatic than their Persian cousins, grew abundantly throughout the islands, and resourceful cooks transformed them into something sublime. Even now, authentic key lime pie remains a taste of history, each bite a connection to the ingenuity of island life. The hammock sways, and you sway with it, your body completely relaxed, your mind drifting like clouds across a summer sky. You think about the waters stretching out before you, and about the dreamers who've searched beneath those waves for fortune. Mel Fisher, the famous treasure hunter, spent 16 years searching for the Spanish galleon Nuestra Señora de Atocha, which sank during a hurricane in 1622 while carrying treasure from the New World. In 1985, Fisher's team finally discovered the wreck off the Marquesas Keys, recovering gold, silver, emeralds, and artifacts worth an estimated $450 million. His motto, "Today's the day," became legendary, a testament to persistence and faith in the face of impossible odds. The sea holds its secrets close, but occasionally, to those patient enough to keep searching, it offers up its treasures like gifts from another age. Your eyelids flutter, and you're not sure if you're awake or dreaming anymore, and it doesn't matter. Through the gauze of near sleep, you remember something about the island's economic history, about an industry that once sustained these communities before tourism took hold. In the late 1800s and early 1900s, the Florida Keys were the center of a thriving sponge harvesting industry, with Key West serving as the sponge capital of the world. Bahamian immigrants, called conchs, dove into the clear waters or used long hooks to pull natural sponges from the ocean floor. These sponges were cleaned, dried, and shipped around the world for use in bathing, cleaning, and even surgical procedures. The industry declined in the 1940s when a blight destroyed much of the sponge population and synthetic sponges entered the market. But for decades, these humble sea creatures provided livelihoods for thousands of families living on these narrow strips of limestone. The sun is truly rising now, painting the sky in watercolor washes of pink and orange and gold, though your eyes remain closed, sensing the light more than seeing it. You picture in your mind the distinctive homes scattered throughout the Keys, structures perfectly suited to their tropical environment. Traditional conch houses, built in the 1800s and early 1900s, feature distinctive architectural elements including steeply pitched metal roofs to shed rain quickly, wide porches to provide shade and catch breezes, high ceilings to allow hot air to rise, and hurricane shutters to protect windows during storms. Many were built from Dade County pine, a dense, termite-resistant wood, and some were even constructed in the Bahamas and shipped to the Keys by barge. These houses, often painted in cheerful pastels, still stand throughout the islands, particularly in Old Town Key West, representing an architectural wisdom developed over generations of living in harmony with tropical weather. Your breathing has become so deep and slow that you're barely breathing at all. It seems just the faintest exchange of air, peaceful and effortless. The hammock rocks gently, and you think about a remarkable freshwater feature hidden among these saltwater islands. The Blue Hole on Big Pine Key is a freshwater lake that serves as a vital water source for local wildlife, particularly alligators, which live in this unlikely freshwater sanctuary surrounded by ocean. This former limestone quarry, now filled with fresh water from the aquifer below, creates an oasis in the midst of salt, a place where freshwater turtles, fish, and wading birds congregate. The presence of alligators this far south in a tropical island chain seems almost impossible, yet there they are, ancient reptiles adapting to life on a narrow strip of land surrounded by an environment they cannot survive in. Testimony to nature's ability to find a way, to persist, to claim every possible niche. The warmth of the rising sun touches your face, gentle and soothing, and through your deep relaxation, you consider the role these islands play for those who love the pursuit of fish. The Florida Keys are considered one of the premier sport fishing destinations in the world, particularly for pursuing the big three of flats fishing, tarpon, bonefish, and permit. The shallow waters surrounding the Keys, the flats where sea and land blur together in a foot or two of crystalline water, attract anglers from around the globe who wade through these shallows casting for the legendary silver king, the ghost-like bonefish, and the elusive permit. Beyond the flats, the deep waters of the Gulf Stream hold sailfish, marlin, and mahi-mahi. Fishing here isn't just recreation. It's a tradition, a culture, a way of connecting with the ocean that has sustained these islands since the first humans arrived on their shores. You're drifting now, truly drifting, consciousness ebbing and flowing like the tide. And through this peaceful haze, you remember one of the Keys' most beautiful natural treasures. Bahia Honda State Park, located in the Lower Keys, is home to one of the few natural sandy beaches in the island chain and is consistently ranked among the best beaches in the United States. The sand here is soft and white, the water impossibly clear in shades of turquoise and aquamarine, and the remains of the old Bahia Honda Rail Bridge Tower overhead, creating a striking juxtaposition of nature and abandoned infrastructure. Snorkelers glide through the shallow waters just offshore, encountering tropical fish, sea stars, and rays, while sea turtles occasionally lumber onto the beach under cover of night to lay their eggs. It's a place where the Keys' natural beauty reveals itself fully, unadorned, perfect in its simplicity. The sun continues its slow ascent, and you feel its warmth spreading across your body, relaxing every muscle even further. One final thought drifts through your mind like morning mist. The islands experience what locals call a tropical savanna climate, where there are only two true seasons, a hot, wet season from May through October, and a warm, dry season from November through April. During the wet season, afternoon thunderstorms arrive with almost predictable regularity, rolling in from the ocean, drenching the islands with warm rain for 20 minutes or an hour, then clearing to reveal rainbows arcing across the water. The dry season brings comfortable temperatures, lower humidity, and endless blue skies, the reason snowbirds flock south each winter, seeking refuge from the cold. But even in the depths of winter, temperatures rarely drop below 65 degrees, making the Keys a perpetual sanctuary from the harshness of northern climates. You've surrendered completely now to rest, to peace, to the gentle rocking of the hammock and the warmth of the sun and the soft whisper of palm fronds overhead. Your body feels lighter than air, your mind quiet and still as a lagoon at dawn, and you float in this perfect moment, held safely by the islands, cradled by the morning, drifting deeper and deeper into tranquil, restorative sleep. The morning has fully arrived now, though time continues to move like honey, slow and golden and sweet. You're walking again, or floating, perhaps, along a wooden boardwalk that winds through a coastal wetland. Your footsteps make no sound, and you feel as though you're gliding through a watercolor painting, everything soft-edged and dreamlike, bathed in the gentle light of early day. The water on either side of the boardwalk shimmers with life, and you notice something extraordinary moving through the shallows. Manatees, those gentle giants of the sea, frequently visit the warm waters of the Florida Keys, especially during cooler winter months when they seek refuge from the colder waters of the Gulf of Mexico and Atlantic Ocean. These peaceful creatures, sometimes called sea cows, drift through the shallows and marina channels, grazing on seagrass meadows, surfacing occasionally to breathe with soft, whiskered faces. They can weigh up to 1,200 pounds, yet they move with such grace, such tranquility, that watching them seems to slow your heartbeat, calm your thoughts, remind you that there's no need to rush through life when you can simply float through it instead. You continue along the boardwalk, your hand trailing along the weathered wooden railing, and your mind drifts to thoughts of another remarkable resident of these waters. The Florida Keys are one of the most important nesting areas for loggerhead sea turtles in the Western Hemisphere, along with green turtles, hawksbill turtles, and the occasional leatherback. Each summer, female turtles emerge from the ocean under the cover of darkness, dragging themselves up the beach to dig nests and lay their eggs in the sand. Weeks later, tiny hatchlings emerge and scramble toward the moonlit water, beginning a journey that will take them around the ocean basin, only to return decades later to these same beaches to nest themselves. This ancient cycle has repeated for millions of years, these islands serving as sanctuary for creatures that have outlasted the dinosaurs, that have witnessed the rise and fall of continents, that carry in their DNA the memory of oceans long transformed. The boardwalk leads you to a small pavilion overlooking the water, and you settle onto a bench, your body sinking into complete relaxation. Through half-closed eyes, you gaze out at the water and think about what lies beneath those calm surfaces. The continental shelf drops off dramatically just a few miles offshore from the Keys, plunging from shallow flats to depths of over 600 feet in the Straits of Florida. This dramatic topography creates a unique situation where you can snorkel in 3 feet of water over a coral reef in the morning, then travel just a short distance offshore to fish in water deeper than a 60-story building is tall. The Gulf Stream, that powerful river of warm water flowing through the ocean, runs close to the Keys as it courses northward, bringing with it tropical waters, pelagic fish, and occasionally seeds and debris from distant Caribbean islands. Your eyelids grow impossibly heavy, and you recline on the bench, using your folded arms as a pillow, gazing up at the sky through the canopy of sea grape leaves overhead. You think about the people who have sought refuge in these islands throughout history, and one particular group comes to mind. During the Cuban Revolution in the 1950s and 1960s, thousands of Cuban refugees arrived in the Florida Keys, particularly in Key West, which became a gateway for those fleeing political upheaval just 90 miles to the south. This influx of Cuban culture infused the Keys with new flavors, traditions, and perspectives, adding to the already rich cultural tapestry woven from Bahamian conchs, Spanish influences, and American frontier spirit. Cuban coffee became a staple, Spanish mixed freely with English in the streets, and the Keys became a place where cultures blended in the way that colors blend in the sea, gradually, beautifully, creating something unique that belonged fully to neither source but to the mixing of both. The warmth of the morning sun, filtered through leaves, creates patterns of light and shadow that dance across your closed eyelids. Your breathing has synchronized with the gentle rhythm of the tide, and you feel your consciousness beginning to drift like seaweed in a current. Through this peaceful haze, you remember something about the protected bird sanctuaries scattered throughout the Keys. The islands serve as critical habitat for more than 250 species of birds, including magnificent frigate birds with their 7-foot wingspans, white-crowned pigeons, roseate spoonbills with their shocking pink plumage, and the great white heron, a bird found in significant numbers only in the Keys. During migration seasons, the islands become rest stops for exhausted songbirds making the dangerous journey across the Gulf of Mexico. Tiny warblers and thrushes dropping from the sky to rest in the mangroves before continuing their journeys north or south. The Keys exist as stepping stones not just for humans traveling between mainland and sea, but for creatures of the air navigating between continents. You're barely conscious now, suspended in that perfect twilight state where you're aware of your surroundings but no longer actively engaging with them. Your mind, soft and quiet, considers the unique geology that continues to shape these islands. The Florida Keys are slowly subsiding, sinking at a rate of about 1 to 2 inches per century, while sea levels rise around them. The islands exist in a delicate balance, their limestone foundations gradually settling while the seas that birthed them rise to reclaim them. Yet life persists, coral grows, mangroves extend their roots, communities adapt and endure. There's something profound in this impermanence, this acknowledgement that even islands are not forever, that everything in nature exists in flux, transformation, the constant dance between creation and dissolution. Your body has become so relaxed that you can barely feel the bench beneath you anymore. You seem to be floating on air, weightless and free. Through the gauze of near sleep, you remember one more detail about the island's maritime heritage. Wrecking, or salvaging cargo from ships that ran aground on the reef, was once a major industry in the Keys, particularly in the 1800s. Key West became the wealthiest city per capita in the United States during this era, built on the misfortune of ships that underestimated the danger of the shallow reef lurking just beneath the turquoise waters. Wreckers would race to be the first to reach a foundered vessel, competing for the right to salvage cargo and earning a percentage of whatever they saved. A network of lighthouses was eventually built to warn ships away from danger, and the wrecking industry declined, but the fortunes built during those salvaging years funded the grand homes that still stand in Key West's historic districts. Monuments to an era when disaster for some meant prosperity for others. The sound of water lapping against the pilings beneath the boardwalk has become the only sound in your universe, a rhythm as fundamental as your own heartbeat. One final thought drifts through your peaceful mind like a boat with no destination. The National Key Deer Refuge, established in 1957, protects more than 9,200 acres across multiple islands in the Lower Keys, serving as sanctuary for the endangered key deer and numerous other species. Within this refuge, speed limits drop to 15 miles per hour to protect the tiny deer that wander across roads, especially at dawn and dusk. Here, in these protected acres, nature operates on its own terms. Deer browse on native plants, marsh rabbits create networks of trails through the underbrush, and red-bellied woodpeckers tap on slash pine trees. It's a reminder that even in a place dedicated to tourism and human enjoyment, spaces must be set aside where the primary residents are the creatures who cannot speak for themselves. Your consciousness has dissolved now like morning mist in sunlight. The boundaries between you and the peaceful morning have blurred until you can't tell where you end and the islands begin. You are the warmth of the sun, the whisper of the breeze, the gentle rhythm of the tide, and you drift deeper, softer, into the most peaceful, restorative sleep, completely at ease, perfectly safe, held by the islands and the morning and the endless patience of the sea. Time has ceased to exist in any meaningful way. You might have been resting on this bench for minutes or hours or days. There's no way to know, and no reason to care. The islands have taught you that clocks are merely suggestions, that the only time that matters is this moment, this breath, this feeling of absolute peace that has settled over you like warm water. You find yourself moving again through the dream, though you're not sure your body is actually moving anymore. Perhaps your spirit has simply detached and begun to wander, exploring these islands in ways that transcend the physical. You're near the water again, always near the water, and you notice something stirring in the shallows beneath a rocky ledge. The Florida Keys are famous for their spiny lobster, also called Caribbean lobster, creatures that differ from their main cousins by lacking the large front claws. Each year, the last consecutive Wednesday and Thursday of July mark the start of the two-day mini-season, when thousands of recreational divers descend on the Keys to hunt for these prized crustaceans hiding in rocky crevices and coral cavities. The lobsters move through the water in long single-file migrations, following each other across the ocean floor in a phenomenon scientists still don't fully understand. Hundreds of lobsters marching together like underwater pilgrims, each with its antennae touching the tail of the one ahead, creating living chains that stretch across the sandy bottom. There's something hypnotic about imagining these processions happening in the depths right now as you rest. Silent migrations occurring in a world just beneath the surface. You drift along a quiet street now, somewhere in Key West perhaps, though the town seems different in this dream state. Softer, quieter, as if the entire island is holding its breath. You think about the spirited celebrations that transform these usually tranquil streets. Key West hosts Fantasy Fest each October, a 10-day celebration known for its elaborate costumes, parades, and body painting, attracting tens of thousands of visitors to the island. For this brief period, the island becomes a canvas for creativity and self-expression, where inhibitions dissolve in the tropical heat and people transform themselves into fantastical creatures, walking art, embodiments of imagination. When the festival ends and the visitors depart, the island returns to its natural rhythm, the streets quiet again, the residents reclaiming their paradise until the next wave of visitors arrives. Your feet, if you still have feet in this dreamlike state, carry you down a famous street, though it's empty now, peaceful in a way it rarely is in waking life. Duval Street in Key West runs just over a mile from the Gulf of Mexico to the Atlantic Ocean, earning it the nickname the longest street in the world because it spans from one side of the ocean to the other. This street has been the heart of Key West's social life for generations, lined with bars, restaurants, galleries, and shops, each establishment with its own story, its own legends. But in your dream, the street is quiet and empty, just you and the gentle sound of your breathing, walking from sea to sea, ocean to ocean, crossing the narrow waist of the island where America ends and the Caribbean begins. You settle onto a weathered bench near the water, your body melting into the wood, and you think about the powerful forces of nature that occasionally remind these islands of their vulnerability. The Florida Keys have been hit by numerous major hurricanes throughout recorded history, including the devastating Labor Day hurricane of 1935, which remains one of the strongest hurricanes ever to make landfall in the United States. That storm generated winds of over 185 miles per hour and a storm surge that swept across the low-lying islands, destroying Henry Flagler's railroad and claiming hundreds of lives. More recently, Hurricane Irma in 2017 battered the Keys with sustained winds and storm surge, testing the resilience of both the islands and their residents. Yet after each storm, the communities rebuild, the mangroves regenerate, the coral begins its slow recovery. The islands understand something about persistence, about bending without breaking, about the difference between being destroyed and being transformed. Through your deepening relaxation, you picture a place where the wonders of the sea are brought within reach of those who cannot or will not venture beneath the waves. The Florida Keys Eco-Discovery Center in Key West offers free admission and features interactive exhibits about the marine environment, including a living reef aquarium, displays about sea turtle rehabilitation, and information about the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. It's a place where children press their faces against glass to watch parrotfish nibbling on coral, where adults learn about the delicate balance of reef ecosystems, where the abstract concept of marine conservation becomes tangible and immediate. The center serves as a bridge between land and sea, making visible the hidden world that exists just offshore, just below the surface, just beyond what the casual visitor might see. Your eyelids have become impossibly heavy, and you let them close completely now, darkness bringing even deeper peace. Behind your closed eyes, you see these islands as they've been throughout history, a magnet for artists, writers, and dreamers seeking inspiration at the edge of the world. Tennessee Williams, the legendary playwright, lived in Key West from 1949 until his death in 1983, writing many of his later works in the tropical setting. He joined a bohemian community that included Robert Frost, Elizabeth Bishop, and countless other artists drawn to the Keys' combination of isolation and inspiration, solitude and creative community. The light here, golden and soft, seems to make everything more vivid, more real, and the distance from mainstream America provides the perspective that artists need. The tradition continues today, with galleries, theaters, and writers' workshops scattered throughout the islands, carrying forward that creative spirit. You're barely tethering to consciousness now, drifting like a leaf on water, and through this peaceful haze, you remember something about one of the ways visitors explore the underwater realm without getting wet. Glass-bottom boat tours have been a staple of Florida Keys tourism since the 1940s, offering those who prefer to stay dry a window into the underwater world. Through the clear glass panels in the boat's hull, passengers peer down at coral reefs, schools of tropical fish, sea turtles gliding through the water, and occasionally even a nurse shark resting on the sandy bottom. The boats glide slowly over the reef, their guides pointing out specific corals and fish, sharing knowledge passed down through generations of working these waters. There's something magical about this viewing, seeing without entering, observing without disturbing, connecting with an alien world while remaining safely in your own. The sun has climbed higher now, and its warmth penetrates deep into your muscles, dissolving any last whispers of tension. One final thought drifts through your mind, soft as silk. The Keys are home to unique plant species found nowhere else on Earth, including the endangered key tree cactus, the smallest tree-like cactus in the world, and the key deer fern, which grows only on big pine and no-name keys. These plants evolved in isolation, adapting to conditions unlike anywhere else. Limestone soils, salt spray, periodic flooding, intense sunshine, and hurricanes that occasionally wipe the islands nearly clean. They persist in specialized niches, clinging to this narrow strip of land between ocean and sky, proof that life finds ways to adapt, to specialize, to claim even the most improbable places as home. They grow slowly, carefully, each one a testament to patience and persistence. Your breathing has become so subtle now, so quiet, that you seem to barely breathe at all, just the faintest whisper of air, in and out. Your body has dissolved into the bench, into the islands, into the warm morning air. You are no longer separate from this place. You have become part of it, drifting, floating, surrendering completely to the deepest, most peaceful rest, safe, content, at home in the embrace of the islands and the sea and the eternal rhythm of the tide. You've dissolved into the landscape now, become part of the morning, part of the islands themselves. There's no distinction anymore between where you end and where the Keys begin. You are the warm breeze, the gentle tide, the sunlight filtering through palm fronds. In this state of perfect peace, you continue your journey through dreams and memory and the slow unfolding of island time. You're aware, in some distant way, of a road stretching out before you, the famous highway that connects these islands like beads on a string. The overseas highway is marked by mile markers, called MM, that count down from MM 126 in Florida City to MM 0 in Key West, serving not just as distance measurements but as the primary way locals give directions and identify locations. I live at MM 81, someone might say, and everyone knows exactly where that is. No street names needed, no complicated directions, just a simple number that places you precisely on this ribbon of road. These green markers become reference points for everything: restaurants, dive sites, real estate listings, emergency services. They're more than signs. They're a coordinate system for an entire way of life, a navigation method as fundamental to the Keys as latitude and longitude are to the sea. The road carries you forward, and you find yourself thinking about the treasures harvested from these waters, culinary delights that grace tables throughout the islands. Stone crab season runs from October 15th through May 15th each year, and during these months, the Keys become the center of this prized fishery. Stone crabs have a remarkable adaptation. Fishermen harvest only one claw from each crab, then return the live crab to the ocean where it can regenerate its missing claw over time. The claws are boiled immediately upon reaching shore, then cracked and served cold with melted butter or mustard sauce. The sweet white meat inside a delicacy that draws food lovers from around the world. There's something almost miraculous about this sustainable harvest, taking what's needed, returning the creature to grow and provide again. A relationship with the ocean based on respect and renewal rather than depletion. Your journey carries you to a place of healing, though you're not sure if you're walking or floating or simply dreaming. You find yourself at a sanctuary where broken wings are mended and hope is restored. The Florida Keys Wild Bird Rehabilitation Center in Taverny rescues and rehabilitates injured wild birds, treating victims of fishing line entanglement, boat strikes, window collisions, and other human-related injuries. Pelicans with damaged pouches, herons with broken wings, hawks poisoned by rat bait, all find refuge here, receiving medical care and time to heal before being released back into the wild. Walking through the outdoor sanctuary, you can hear the calls of recovering birds, the deep croak of pelicans, the sharp cry of ospreys, the gentle cooing of doves, a chorus of survival, a testament to the human capacity for compassion and repair. You drift southward through your dream, and you arrive in a place that claims a proud title. Isla Morada, located in the Upper Keys, calls itself the sport fishing capital of the world, and the claim is backed by the remarkable abundance and diversity of game fish in the surrounding waters. The name Isla Morada comes from Spanish, meaning Purple Island, possibly referring to the purple snails that once littered the beaches or the purple sea fans in offshore waters. Here, in these waters where the Atlantic and Florida Bay meet, where shallow flats transition to deep channels, where baitfish swarm and predators hunt, anglers pursue their dreams beneath tropical skies. Charter boats line the marinas, their captains carrying generations of knowledge about tides and currents and the secret spots where fish gather. Your consciousness drifts with the current now, and you think about the great migrations that occur in these waters, ancient patterns woven into the fabric of the ocean. Every spring, tarpon migrate through the Keys by the thousands. These magnificent silver fish, some weighing over 100 pounds, moving through the channels and flats in their annual journey. They roll on the surface, their scales catching the sunlight like mirrors, their presence announced by the distinctive gulp as they breathe air at the surface. And in the fall and winter, schools of bonefish, those ghost gray phantoms of the flats, appear in greater numbers, tailing in inches of water as they root for crabs and shrimp in the sandy bottom. These migrations mark time more reliably than any calendar, connecting the Keys to larger patterns that span entire oceans, cycles that have repeated since long before humans arrived to witness them. Through the deepening haze of relaxation, you picture a small island with grand history, now quiet and slowly returning to the sea. Indian Key Historic State Park, a 10-acre island in the Upper Keys, was once a thriving town of about 40 to 50 residents in the 1830s, serving as a wrecking station and the county seat. The island was attacked and burned by Seminoles in 1840 during the Second Seminole War, and though briefly rebuilt, it was eventually abandoned. Today, visitors can take a boat to this tiny island and walk among the ruins. Foundation stones, cisterns, and sisal plants gone wild, while interpretive signs tell the story of this ambitious outpost. Standing on Indian Key, surrounded by water and ruins, you can feel the impermanence of human endeavors, how quickly the jungle reclaims what we build, how the sea patiently waits to take back what was always hers. You're barely conscious now, your mind like water reflecting clouds, peaceful, clear, empty of everything except this moment. Through this tranquil state, you become aware of why these waters reveal their secrets so readily to those who look. The water clarity in the Florida Keys can exceed 100 feet of visibility on the best days, particularly on the Atlantic side during calm conditions. This remarkable transparency occurs because the Gulf Stream brings clear oceanic water close to shore, and the limestone bottom reflects light upward rather than absorbing it as sand or mud would. This clarity transforms snorkeling and diving into experiences of flying rather than swimming. Suspended in liquid crystal, you can see in all directions, watch fish far below, observe rays gliding across the bottom, count individual branches of coral from the surface. The water becomes a lens, not a barrier, making visible what remains hidden in cloudier seas. Your breathing has become a whisper, barely perceptible, synchronized with the distant sound of wavelets against the shore. One final thought drifts through your consciousness like the ghost of a dream. The Florida Keys history includes colorful chapters of piracy and smuggling that stretch from the Spanish colonial era through Prohibition and even to modern times. In the 1700s and early 1800s, pirates used the Keys' countless small islands and shallow channels as hiding places, ambushing merchant ships passing through the Florida Straits. During Prohibition in the 1920s, the Keys became a major entry point for rum runners bringing alcohol from Cuba and the Bahamas. The maze of mangrove islands and channels, the proximity to foreign shores, the isolation from law enforcement, all made the Keys ideal for those operating outside the law. Some say the independent spirit that defines the Keys today grew from this history of resistance to outside authority, this tradition of finding your own way regardless of what distant governments decree. You've surrendered completely now to the islands and to sleep. Your body has become part of the warm sand, part of the gentle tide, part of the morning light. There is no separation anymore between you and this place of peace. You are dissolving, drifting, floating on currents deeper than ocean, into sleep so profound and restful that hours will pass like moments. And in this perfect state of rest, held safely by the islands and the sea, you dream the dreams of coral and tide, timeless, peaceful, home. Deep, deep sleep has claimed you now, yet some part of your consciousness continues its gentle wandering through these islands, moving through dreams that feel more real than waking ever did. You're floating above the islands, seeing them from a perspective usually reserved for seabirds. The way they curve and arc across the water, the way the light catches the shallows in shades of turquoise and jade, the way everything seems to glow from within. As you drift, suspended between sea and sky, you think about something fundamental to life on these limestone outcroppings, the question of water itself. Fresh water in the Florida Keys comes from a thin freshwater lens that floats atop denser saltwater beneath the islands, created by rainwater that percolates through the porous limestone. This fragile resource is supplemented by an 18-mile pipeline from the mainland that delivers millions of gallons of fresh water daily to the Keys. Before this pipeline was completed in the 1940s, residents collected rainwater in cisterns, some so desperate for fresh water that they'd scrub out their cisterns with lemon juice to improve the taste. The relationship between these islands and fresh water is tenuous, miraculous. Civilization here depends on this delicate balance, this pipeline, this thin lens of potable water hovering improbably above the salt. You descend from your bird's-eye view, settling gently back into the landscape, and find yourself on a beach that feels different from the others you visited. Sombrero Beach in Marathon is considered one of the finest beaches in the Keys, with imported soft white sand, swaying palm trees, calm shallow waters perfect for swimming, and a relaxed atmosphere far from the crowds of Key West. Local families gather here on weekends, spreading blankets on the sand, wading in the gentle surf, barbecuing under the pavilions. The beach faces the Atlantic, and on clear days, you can see the reef line marked by the change in watercolor, lighter turquoise giving way to deeper blue. Children build sandcastles at the water's edge, their laughter carried on the breeze, while parents doze in beach chairs, lulled by sun and sea into that perfect vacation stupor where time loses all meaning. Your dreaming footsteps carry you to a place of unexpected encounters, where the boundary between human and animal becomes permeable. Theatre of the Sea in Islamorada, established in 1946, is one of the world's oldest marine mammal facilities, where visitors can swim with dolphins, meet sea lions, and observe rescued marine animals in lagoons carved from natural limestone quarries. The dolphins here were born under human care, their lives intertwined with humans in ways their wild cousins never experience. They perform graceful leaps, respond to trainers' signals, and offer visitors brief moments of connection across the species divide. There's something both wonderful and melancholy about these encounters. The joy of touching a dolphin's smooth skin, the intelligence in their eyes, but also the knowledge that these magnificent creatures evolved to roam vast oceans, not limestone pools, no matter how carefully tended. The afternoon light slants golden across the water now, or perhaps it's morning, or perhaps time has no meaning in this dreamscape. You find yourself drawn to a gathering place, a celebration that occurs with the reliability of the tides themselves. Mallory Square in Key West hosts the famous sunset celebration every evening, where crowds gather to watch the sun sink into the Gulf of Mexico while street performers, artists, and food vendors create a carnival atmosphere. Jugglers toss flaming torches, musicians play steel drums, a man balances on a high wire, cats jump through hoops, and through it all, the sun descends in glory, painting the sky in colors that seem impossible. Oranges that border on red, purples that edge toward pink, golds that shimmer like molten metal. When the sun finally touches the horizon, the crowd applauds, cheering the end of another day in paradise, a ritual that acknowledges something fundamental, that each sunset is a gift, each day precious, each moment of beauty worth pausing to honor. Your consciousness drifts lazily now, like seaweed swaying in gentle current, and you notice something unusual moving through the landscape around you. Green iguanas, though not native to the Keys, have established large populations throughout the islands. These dinosaur-like lizards basking on seawalls, lounging in trees, grazing on ornamental plants. They arrived as escaped or released pets and found the climate perfectly suited to their needs. Some grow to 5 feet long, their dewlaps bright orange or pink, their scales catching sunlight as they perch motionless for hours. Residents have mixed feelings about these prehistoric-looking immigrants. Some find them charming, others consider them pests, but all agree they've become part of the landscape, as much a feature of the Keys now as the chickens in Key West or the key deer in Big Pine. You're barely tethered to awareness now, floating in that space between sleeping and dreaming where both seem equally real. Through this peaceful haze, you become aware of the old bridges that parallel the new highway, structures that once carried cars and now serve a different purpose. Many of the original 7-mile bridge and other old bridges have been converted into fishing piers and walking paths, their weathered concrete spanning the water open to the sky. Local fishermen line these old bridges, casting for yellowtail snapper, grouper, and tarpon, while walkers and joggers traverse their length for the views and exercise. The old bridges are slowly succumbing to time, chunks of concrete missing, rebar exposed, the sea gradually reclaiming what humans built. There's poetry in this transformation, these monuments to human ambition becoming playgrounds and fishing spots, then gradually dissolving back into the ocean that they temporarily conquered. Your breathing has become so slow and deep that you seem to breathe only once per minute, each breath a journey in itself. Through your deepening relaxation, you picture a particular place beneath the waves, a reef that draws divers from around the world. Looe Key, located in the Lower Keys, is part of the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary and features one of the most pristine coral reefs in the Keys, with massive star coral formations, delicate sea fans swaying in the current, and an incredible diversity of tropical fish. The reef was named after the HMS Looe, a British frigate that ran aground here in 1744. Now, centuries later, divers descend to depths of 30 feet and find themselves in an underwater garden. Schooling grunts, curious angelfish, territorial damselfish, graceful eagle rays gliding past like underwater birds. The water is so clear that boats appear to float on air, their shadows visible on the reef below, and time underwater passes in a dream state that feels remarkably similar to the sleep you're experiencing now. The light has shifted again, or perhaps there is no light anymore, just the warm darkness of deep rest. One final thought drifts through your mind like the last note of a fading song. Higgs Beach in Key West has been home to a flock of flamingos and other exotic birds in a coastal habitat. Though flamingos are not naturally found in the Keys, these pink beauties are imports, living in managed habitats and occasionally delighting beachgoers with their improbable presence. But wild flamingos did once visit the Keys occasionally, and some believe that with conservation efforts and changing climate patterns, they may return to these islands one day, reclaiming habitat they occupied centuries ago. The sight of a flamingo against turquoise water and white sand seems to embody everything the Keys represent. Unexpected, tropical, slightly surreal, a place where the improbable becomes possible, where dreams made of pink feathers and salt water come to life. You've dissolved completely into sleep now, so deep that you've forgotten what waking feels like. Your mind has become as still as a lagoon at midnight, reflecting only stars. Your body has merged with the earth beneath you, inseparable from the sand and stone and ancient coral. There is no you anymore. Only peace, only warmth, only the eternal rhythm of breath and tide. And in this profound rest, you drift through oceans of sleep, timeless and weightless, cradled by the islands, held by the sea, completely and utterly at peace. In the depths of sleep, where dreams take shapes that waking minds could never conceive, you continue your journey through these islands of coral and limestone and endless blue water. You're nowhere and everywhere at once, existing in a state of pure peace, pure rest, where even the concept of travel has dissolved into simple being. Beneath the surface of the water, in the realm you can sense but not see, something remarkable is happening. A silent drama unfolding in the coral gardens. Lionfish, beautiful but invasive predators with venomous spines and striking zebra-striped coloring, have established populations throughout the Keys reefs since their introduction in the 1980s, likely from aquarium releases. These fish, native to the Indo-Pacific, have no natural predators in Atlantic waters and consume vast quantities of native fish, disrupting the delicate balance of reef ecosystems. In response, the Keys have fought back, organizing lionfish derbies where divers compete to remove as many as possible, teaching restaurants to serve lionfish as a menu item, transforming an ecological threat into a culinary delicacy. The flesh is white, flaky, and delicious, turning an invasive species into a sustainable food source. It's a uniquely Keys solution, practical, creative, and focused on working with nature rather than simply against it. You drift through your sleep to a particular corner of Key West, to an iconic landmark where tourists line up to take photographs. The southernmost point buoy in Key West, a massive concrete marker painted in black, red, and yellow, marks the southernmost point of the continental United States, though technically a nearby naval base is slightly more southern. The buoy, installed in 1983, declares 90 miles to Cuba and has become one of the most photographed monuments in America. People wait their turn to stand beside it, to capture proof they've reached the edge, the end, the southernmost place you can drive in the continental United States. But in your dream, the spot is empty and quiet, just you and the monument and the endless expanse of ocean beyond, stretching toward Cuba, toward the Caribbean, toward everything that lies south of here. Your dreaming consciousness carries you northward now, to the heart of the island chain, the place where distance is measured from both directions. Marathon, located roughly in the middle of the Keys at mile marker 50, serves as a hub for the island chain, a place where locals come for groceries, hardware stores, and services not available in the smaller Keys. The town grew around the construction of Flagler's Railroad, its name supposedly coming from the marathon work sessions required to complete this challenging section of the route. Today, Marathon straddles the line between tourist destination and working town. Charter fishing boats share the waters with commercial vessels. Resorts coexist with mobile home parks, and the feeling is more authentic, less polished than Key West to the south. It's a place where real people live real lives, where the Keys reveal themselves not as a fantasy but as home. The water around you in your dream begins to shimmer with movement, and you become aware of a sleek, predatory presence. Barracuda, those torpedo-shaped hunters with fearsome teeth, patrol the waters throughout the Keys, often hanging motionless in the water column, their silvery bodies nearly invisible until they explode into motion to capture prey. Despite their intimidating appearance and mouthful of razor-sharp teeth, barracuda rarely threaten humans. They're curious fish, sometimes following divers or snorkelers, their unblinking eyes seeming to assess whether you might be food. In the shallows of the flats, they lurk in channels, ambush predators waiting for smaller fish to swim past. There's something primordial about encountering a large barracuda underwater, something that reminds you that you're a visitor in their realm, that beneath the postcard pretty surface, the ocean remains wild, untamed, operating according to rules far older than human understanding. Your dream carries you to shore, to markets and restaurants where a particular local delicacy is prepared with reverence and tradition. Conch, pronounced conch, refers to the large marine mollusk that once thrived in the Keys waters and gave its name to the island's residents. The beautiful spiral shells littered beaches in such abundance that they were used in construction, and the meat fed generations of Keys families. Overharvesting led to the closure of commercial conch fishing in Florida waters in the 1970s. But the tradition continues with imported conch from the Bahamas and Caribbean. Conch fritters, conch chowder, cracked conch. These dishes connect the present to the past, each bite a taste of history, a flavor that defines the Keys as surely as key lime pie. The empty shells, smooth and pink inside, still wash up on beaches occasionally, reminders of abundance that once was. treasures for beachcombers to discover and hold to their ears, listening for the ocean's whisper. Through the deepening haze of your sleep, you find yourself standing before a grand house with a story to tell. The Audubon House and Tropical Gardens in Key West, built in the 1840s, is one of the finest examples of early Key West architecture. A three-story home built by a wrecker captain during the height of Key West's salvaging prosperity. The house is named after John James Audubon, the famous naturalist and bird artist, who visited Key West in 1832 and created several paintings based on birds observed in the Keys. Today, the house is a museum filled with period antiques and original Audubon engravings, surrounded by lush tropical gardens where butterflies drift among orchids and rare palms. Walking through these rooms, you can feel the weight of history. Imagine the wrecker captain watching the horizon for ships in distress. Picture Audubon sketching the white-crowned pigeons and herons that still inhabit these islands today. Your consciousness has become gossamer thin now, barely present, like morning mist that will vanish with the first strong sunlight. In this state, you think about the trees that gave their name to the island's most famous dessert. Key lime trees, with their small, aromatic limes, once grew abundantly throughout the Keys, thriving in the thin limestone soil where other citrus struggled. These limes, smaller and more flavorful than the Persian limes found in most grocery stores, became a staple ingredient for island cooks. A hurricane in 1926 destroyed many of the trees, and disease and development eliminated most of what remained. But small groves and backyard trees still produce these precious fruits. Picking a key lime from a tree, rolling it between your palms to release the oils, cutting into the thin skin to reveal the pale yellow-green flesh. This simple act connects you to generations of Keys residents who relied on these trees, who transformed their tart juice into pies and marinades and cooling drinks to combat the tropical heat. You're barely breathing now, each breath taking minutes, or perhaps you've stopped breathing altogether and simply exist, sustained by the islands themselves. One final thought drifts through the profound stillness of your mind like a cloud across a moonless sky. The Florida Keys experience a unique weather pattern where afternoon thunderstorms during the summer months arrive with almost predictable regularity, building over the land as the sun heats the limestone and vegetation, then marching out over the water to dissipate. These storms are brief but intense. Brilliant lightning, thunder that rattles windows, rain so heavy you can't see across the street. Then, within an hour, the sun emerges, the pavement steams, and rainbows arc across the water. This daily rhythm, heat building, clouds gathering, rain releasing, air clearing, becomes a heartbeat during summer months, as reliable as the tide, as natural as breathing. The storms clean the air, cool the temperature, water the gardens, and remind everyone that in the tropics, nature sets the schedule, and humans simply adjust their plans accordingly. You are nothing now but peace itself, formless, timeless, dissolved into sleep so deep that it borders on transcendence. The islands have claimed you completely, incorporated you into their rhythm, their story, their endless cycle of tide and sun and rain and stars. You are the coral growing imperceptibly beneath the waves, the mangrove root extending through dark water, the turtle egg buried in warm sand, the trade wind that has blown across these islands for 10,000 years. You have become the Keys themselves, and in this profound merger, this complete surrender, you rest, deeply, peacefully, eternally, held in the embrace of sea and stone and tropical sky. In the deepest chambers of sleep, where consciousness barely flickers like a candle flame about to extinguish, you continue your timeless journey through these islands. Hours have passed, though you have no awareness of time's passage. The night and day have cycled, tides have risen and fallen, and still you rest, deeper than you've ever rested before, in a state of peace so profound it feels almost sacred. In this dreamless dream, you find yourself drifting through waters that hold secrets from centuries past. The waters around the Keys contain Spanish colonial silver coins, gold doubloons, and emeralds from shipwrecks dating back to the 1500s, treasures that still occasionally wash up on beaches after strong storms or are discovered by metal detector enthusiasts walking the shoreline at dawn. The Plate Fleet of 1715, a convoy of Spanish treasure ships, was destroyed by a hurricane off Florida's east coast, and currents have carried artifacts south to the Keys over the centuries. Beach walkers sometimes find a blackened coin in the sand, a piece of 8 worn smooth by centuries of tumbling in the surf, a tangible connection to the age of exploration when these waters were highways for galleons heavy with New World wealth sailing back to Spain. These small treasures, resting in pockets of sand between rocks, wait patiently for storms to reveal them, for luck to place them in someone's path, links to a past that feels impossibly distant yet remains literally underfoot. Your sleeping form has become part of the landscape now. Seabirds might land on you without noticing the difference between flesh and driftwood. Through this complete dissolution, you sense something about the very foundation of the islands themselves. The fossilized coral that forms the bedrock of the Keys is approximately 125,000 years old. Created during the Pleistocene epoch when sea levels were higher than today and a barrier reef formed in what is now the island chain. When sea levels dropped during the Ice Ages, this ancient reef was exposed, weathered by rain and wind into the porous limestone that forms the Keys today. Walking on these islands, you're walking on what was once a living reef. Every rock, every piece of limestone beneath the soil, was formed by tiny coral polyps building their calcium carbonate skeletons, generation after generation, creating the foundation for islands that wouldn't exist for another 100,000 years. The time scales involved are dizzying, humbling. These islands are both ancient and temporary, momentary outcroppings in the endless conversation between sea and stone. The moonlight, or sunlight, or perhaps the light of dreams, illuminates a scene in the shallows where something prehistoric patrols. Nurse sharks, docile bottom dwellers that can grow up to 14 feet long, are common in the Keys' shallow waters, often resting in groups under ledges or in sandy channels during the day. Despite their size and the word shark in their name, nurse sharks are gentle creatures that feed on small fish, shrimp, and mollusks sucked from the bottom. Snorkelers sometimes encounter them resting on the sand, their broad heads and small eyes giving them an almost pupa-like appearance. At night, they emerge from their resting spots to hunt, using barbels near their mouths to sense prey hidden in the sand. There's something reassuring about these sharks. They remind us that not all predators are dangerous to humans, that the word shark doesn't automatically mean threat, that the ocean contains multitudes of creatures living their lives with complete indifference to our fear and fascination. In your state of profound rest, you drift to a place where fresh water meets salt, where ecosystems blend and unique habitats emerge. The backcountry waters of the Keys, the shallow Florida Bay side with its maze of mangrove islands, offer completely different experiences from the Atlantic side, with waters rarely more than a few feet deep stretching for miles, creating an endless labyrinth of channels, flats, and islands. This is where tarpon roll in channels, where bonefish tail on sand flats, where permit cruise in schools, where roseate spoonbills wade through shallows. The backcountry is quieter, more secretive than the reef side. There are no crashing waves here, no deep water, just endless shallows reflecting the sky, making it difficult to tell where water ends and air begins. Exploring this backcountry requires patience and local knowledge. The channels that look identical hold different depths. The flats that appear empty suddenly reveal schools of fish. The mangrove islands that seem to form a solid wall open unexpectedly to reveal passages through. It's a landscape of subtlety, where differences of inches in depth determine everything, where the observant are rewarded and the careless run aground. Your breathing continues in its impossibly slow rhythm, and through the veil of deepest sleep, you sense a celebration of freedom and independence that defines the Keys spirit. The Conch Republic Independence Celebration occurs every April, commemorating the 1982 secession with a week of events including drag races, bed races, and the symbolic raising of the Conch Republic flag. The celebration has grown from a local joke into a genuine cultural touchstone, a reminder that the Keys have always operated by their own rules, maintained their own identity regardless of what Tallahassee or Washington might decree. There's something deeply American about this mock rebellion. The right to be different, to chart your own course, to govern your own small corner of the world according to principles that might seem strange to outsiders but make perfect sense to those who live here. The celebration is both parody and genuine expression, tongue-in-cheek yet heartfelt, exactly like the Keys themselves. You've descended to depths of sleep that few ever reach, places where the mind becomes still as ancient stone, where thoughts cease their endless motion and simply rest. In this profound stillness, you become aware of structures rising from the seafloor, artificial reefs deliberately created. The Keys have one of the most extensive artificial reef programs in the United States, with hundreds of structures, from sunken ships to concrete reef balls, placed strategically to create fish habitat and relieve pressure on natural reefs. The USS Spiegel Grove, a 510-foot Navy landing ship, was intentionally sunk off Key Largo in 2002 and now serves as both an artificial reef and one of the most popular dive sites in the Keys. These artificial structures are quickly colonized by corals, sponges, and marine life, transforming from bare metal or concrete into living ecosystems within months. It's a form of ocean gardening, planting seeds that will grow into reefs, creating oases of life where once there was only sand. The sunken ships in particular carry a poetry. Vessels that once sailed the surface now provide shelter beneath the waves, their hulls homes for Goliath grouper, their passages navigated by curious divers rather than sailors. The distinction between sleeping and waking has ceased to exist for you. If someone asked whether you were asleep or awake, you wouldn't be able to answer, wouldn't even understand the question. Through this complete surrender to rest, you sense something about the people who first charted these waters for European maps. Ponce de Leon, the Spanish explorer searching for the Fountain of Youth, sailed through the Keys in 1513, naming the islands Los Motes, the Martyrs, because from a distance, the rocks and trees looked like suffering men. He was seeking eternal youth in Florida's waters, driven by indigenous tales of a spring that could restore vitality. He never found his fountain, but in a sense, it exists here still. People come to the Keys to feel younger, freer, unburdened by the weight of mainland life. The warm waters, the tropical air, the slower pace, the permission to live differently. These are the real fountain of youth. Not a magical spring, but a place and a way of being that allows people to shed years of accumulated stress and remember what it feels like to simply exist in the present moment. You are beyond sleep now, in a state that has no name, where you've merged completely with the universe, become one with everything. One final thought drifts through this infinite peace like a single leaf falling through still air. Fort Zachary Taylor, built between 1845 and 1866, played crucial roles in the Civil War and Spanish-American War and now sits within a state park that includes one of Key West's best beaches. The fort itself, constructed of millions of red bricks, once housed the largest collection of Civil War cannons in the United States, discovered buried in sand during restoration work. Today, visitors explore its arched corridors and climb to the ramparts, imagining soldiers scanning the horizon for enemy ships, protecting this strategic outpost at the edge of America. The fort reminds us that these islands, so peaceful now, have witnessed conflict, strategy, the playing out of national dramas on a stage of coral and limestone. Yet time has transformed the fort from military installation to playground, from bulwark against invasion to backdrop for weddings and picnics, proving that even the monuments of war eventually soften into tourist attractions and historical curiosities. There is no you anymore, only peace, only the islands, only the eternal present moment stretching in all directions. Your consciousness has dissolved like sugar in warm tea. Your body has become indistinguishable from the earth that holds it. And in this complete merger with everything, this total surrender to rest, you exist in a state of grace, timeless, formless, held in the loving embrace of sea and sky, drifting through oceans of peace that have no shore, no beginning, no end, only this eternal now, this perfect rest, this home you never knew existed but have somehow always known. In the infinite depths of sleep, where time itself has dissolved and only peace remains, you continue to rest, held safely by these islands of coral and dreams. The journey through 100 facts about the Florida Keys is nearly complete, and yet completion feels meaningless here, where beginnings and endings have merged into one continuous moment of perfect tranquility. Somewhere in the distance, or perhaps in the depths of your dreaming mind, you sense the presence of something vital to the Keys' identity. The pink flamingos at Higgs Beach and the Key West Butterfly and Nature Conservatory represent the tropical biodiversity that makes the Keys unique, though most are in managed habitats rather than wild. Yet the dream of wild flamingos returning persists. There are documented sightings from the 1800s, and conservationists hope that one day, these pink ambassadors of the tropics might reclaim the Keys as part of their natural range, adding one more impossibly beautiful element to islands already overflowing with natural splendor. Your sleeping form hasn't moved in hours, and around you the world has continued its gentle rotation. Tides have shifted, clouds have drifted past, moonlight has given way to starlight, has given way to dawn, has given way to dusk again. Through this passage of time you remain unaware, suspended in rest. And in this state, you sense something about the very soil beneath you. The thin soil layer covering the Key's limestone bedrock supports a unique tropical hardwood hammock ecosystem, where Jamaican dogwood, gumbo limbo, mahogany, and poisonwood trees grow in dense tangles, creating shaded canopies where rare tree snails climb through branches and endangered species find refuge. These hammocks exist as islands within islands, elevated patches of dense forest surrounded by mangrove and salt marsh, each one a biodiversity hotspot, each one increasingly rare as development claims the land. In the soft twilight of your consciousness, you become aware of a distinctive architectural style that speaks to the island's multicultural heritage. The eyebrow houses of Key West feature overhanging eaves above windows that shade the glass from the intense tropical sun while still allowing breezes to flow through, a design element brought by Bahamian shipwrights who settled in the Keys. These practical yet beautiful details, along with the tin roofs, the wide porches, the cisterns for collecting rainwater, represent an architectural wisdom developed over generations, each element serving a purpose in the challenging environment of heat, humidity, salt air, and hurricanes. The houses themselves are teachers, showing us that beauty and function need not be separate, that the most elegant solutions often arise from working with nature rather than against it. Your breathing has become so subtle that you might have stopped breathing entirely, sustained now by some other force, by the islands themselves perhaps, by the rhythm of the ocean, by the warm tropical air that seems to nourish you without need for conscious breath. Through this state, you sense the story of rescue and rehabilitation that continues daily in the Keys. The Turtle Hospital in Marathon rescues and rehabilitates injured and sick sea turtles, treating everything from boat strike injuries to tumors to entanglement wounds. These ancient mariners, some weighing hundreds of pounds, some decades old, receive medical care in specialized tanks before being released back into the ocean. The hospital serves as a reminder that humans, having created many of the dangers that injure these turtles, also have the capacity to heal, to help, to undo some of the damage we've caused. Each turtle returned to the sea represents a small victory, hope made tangible, proof that individual actions matter. The boundary between your sleeping body and the world around you has vanished entirely. You are the warm breeze, the gentle tide, the moonlight on water. And somewhere in this merger, you understand something about the way the Keys nurture artistic expression. The studios of Key West provides affordable studio space and support for artists and writers, continuing the island's long tradition as a haven for creative souls. Painters, sculptors, writers, and performers work in these studios, drawing inspiration from the light, the color, the creative energy that has flowed through the Keys for generations. The tradition that began with Hemingway, Williams, and countless others continues today in these studios, in galleries throughout the islands, in the street performers who transform Mallory Square into theater every evening. The Keys remain a place where art happens naturally, where creativity flows like the Gulf Stream, where the boundary between life and art becomes permeable. In the deepest caverns of your rest, where consciousness exists only as the faintest glimmer, you sense something about the natural cycles that govern life in these islands. Hurricane season runs from June through November, with September historically the most active month, when warm ocean waters fuel massive storms that occasionally devastate the Keys. Yet the islands persist, the communities rebuild, the ecosystems recover. Hurricanes are not aberrations here but part of the natural order, pruning trees, reshaping beaches, reminding humans of their proper place in the hierarchy of forces. The islands have survived countless hurricanes over thousands of years, and they'll survive countless more, adapting, persisting, enduring long after individual storms are forgotten. You exist now in a state beyond description, beyond words, in the very heart of peace itself. And through this infinite calm, you become aware of a place where history is preserved and honored. The Key West Shipwreck Museum tells the story of the wrecking industry that made Key West the richest city per capita in America during the 1800s. Actors in period costume reenact the excitement of spotting a ship in distress, the race to be first on the scene, the dangerous work of salvaging cargo. The museum sits near the waterfront where the warehouses once stood, where fortunes were made and lost with the turn of a tide, where men risked their lives in heavy seas to save cargo and sometimes lives from ships that had run aground on the unforgiving reef. Your consciousness is gossamer now, thinner than morning mist, barely present at all. Through this near absence, you sense the legacy of one of Key West's most colorful characters. Captain Tony's Saloon, once known as Sloppy Joe's, claims to be the oldest bar in Florida, and its history includes legends of Hemingway drinking there, of a hanging tree growing through the bar, of bodies buried beneath the floor from the building's earlier days as a morgue and icehouse. Whether all the stories are true hardly matters. They've become part of the Keys mythology, that blend of fact and legend that makes history more interesting than truth. Captain Tony himself, a colorful character who served as Key West's mayor and lived multiple lifetimes worth of adventures, embodied the Keys spirit, irreverent, independent, larger than life, operating by his own rules. You have transcended sleep now and entered something beyond it, a state of rest so complete that you've merged with eternity itself. And in this merger, you understand something profound about the Keys' relationship with sustainability. The Florida Keys have implemented progressive environmental protections, including bans on certain sunscreens that damage coral reefs and strict regulations on development to protect water quality and sensitive habitats. The islands are learning, slowly, to balance human presence with environmental preservation, recognizing that the natural beauty that attracts millions of visitors is finite, fragile, in need of protection. It's a delicate dance, welcoming tourism while protecting the very resources that make tourism possible, allowing development while preserving the natural systems that make the islands livable. The Keys are pioneering approaches that other coastal communities around the world will need to adopt, showing that paradise and preservation can coexist, but only with vigilance, regulation, and a willingness to prioritize long-term health over short-term profit. In the final moments of this journey, in the deepest peace you've ever known, you sense one more truth about these islands that have cradled you through this long, restful night. No Name Key, one of the least developed islands in the lower Keys, remains largely wild, home to key deer, mangroves, and solitude. It represents what the Keys once were before the overseas highway connected them to the mainland, before tourism discovered them, before they became what they are today. Walking the quiet roads of No Name Key, you can imagine the islands as they existed for thousands of years, wild, untouched, belonging wholly to themselves. And perhaps that's the final gift the Keys offer. The knowledge that even in the midst of development and tourism and human activity, wild places still exist, waiting patiently for those who seek solitude, silence, and connection with something older and wiser than civilization. And finally, as this journey through 100 facts draws to its gentle close, you rest in the understanding that the Florida Keys exist as a liminal space, neither fully land nor fully sea, neither wholly American nor entirely Caribbean, a place between worlds where the rules are different, where time moves slowly, where the ocean whispers eternal truths to those patient enough to listen. These islands have shared their secrets with you tonight, their history, their ecology, their culture, their spirit, and in return, they've given you the gift of rest, the blessing of peace, the sanctuary of sleep so deep and restorative that you'll awaken refreshed, renewed, ready to face whatever tomorrow brings. Thank you so much for spending these hours here at the Sleepy Island Channel, letting me guide you through the Florida Keys, through 100 facts woven into stories, through islands and coral and endless blue water. I hope you found the peace you were searching for, the rest you needed, the escape from whatever weighs on your mind. The Florida Keys will be here whenever you need them, these islands of limestone and dreams, waiting patiently in the warm waters at the edge of America, ready to welcome you back into their embrace. Sleep well, rest deeply, and know that you are safe, you are peaceful, you are exactly where you need to be. Thank you for watching the Sleepy Island Channel. Good night and sweet dreams.